Hello and welcome to our 50th episode of the Gutenberg Changelog podcast. Today we will talk about the preliminary roadmap for 5.9, WordPress 5.9, the Gutenberg 11.3 release, and the navigation screen and block, and so many more things. I'm Birgit Polly-Hart, curator at the Gutenberg Times, and I'm here with my co-host, Grzegorz Chalkowski, code wrangler at Automatic and WordPress core contributor. Good morning, Grzegorz. How are you? Thank you for agreeing to record this early and accommodate my in-laws' schedule. It's fabulous weather for a bicycle tour tomorrow, so we're doing it today. How are you?
Hello, Birgit. I'm great. It's Wednesday and we are before the official release of the Gutenberg plugin, but it looks like everything is ready. So we are recording anyway. So the weather here is similar. It's maybe not for a bicycle tour for me, but there is a lot of activities outside. Like I hope to play basketball in the evening with my friends. So that's great as always.
Yeah, so some physical exhaustion in the heat. Yes.
It's in fact the weather is great because it's hot during the day, but the mornings and evenings there are quite chilly.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Good. So first we have I mentioned it is Matthias Ventura published a preliminary roadmap for WordPress 5.9. Now that 5.8 is out with some of the full site editing in there, some blog designs, blog patterns, he has some thoughts on what needs to happen for the next release. And his post divides up the work in 6 sections. And we're just going to touch briefly on it, but do chime in, Grzegorz, anytime. So the first thing he mentioned is blogs and intrinsic web design. He feels that the responsive tool, and of course, not only he feels that, every theme developer feels that the responsive tools are still missing for blogs, and that needs to be addressed in regards to intrinsic web design, which is an evolution from the responsive designs and is about page layouts. And he considers, so 3 context matters is really the point here, that if a block isn't displayed on screen or on the phone, it still needs styling to consider the context. So it would be displayed as an inner block in a column display. It definitely also needs a different styling than when it's in a single row by itself. And that needs to be addressed. And I looked up the expression intrinsic web design because I wasn't all that familiar with it. And it was coined
I don't know that one as well, so I'm curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, and it was coined by Jen Simmons. She brought the grid layout to us as a responsive design plus, and it's fixing some of the shortcomings and hacks of the responsive designs. Without going any deeper in here, a couple of years ago, she did a great talk at the event Apart and we will have the video link in our show notes about that, where she breaks down how we address a flow layout or flex layout, grid layout, and then so forth. But that's definitely something that needs to get into the Gutenberg blocks now that we are approaching page layouts with the site editor. There needs to be done some more work, as Matthias says.
So like in terms of technical aspect, is it less about using media queries to style your website and more about like to make the design change according to the space it has? So it's more based on what's the like neighbors of your blog. If it is something that is in the column, then classical media queries wouldn't work because it's still too narrow. So that makes a lot of sense.
And the viewpoints, the hard-coded viewpoints that you see some in a lot of designs, they're not always applied because the tablets get bigger, the phones get bigger, the phones get smaller, and then you watch it on a big screen, which is kind of beyond the normal computer screen. So the context changes so much on that. So yeah, and I know that there are brilliant people in the Gutenberg team that kind of can address that, but you needed to have the whole thing. I hear the rumblings kind of that a developer needs to override the block, or a theme developer needs to override the block styling to get it into his own theme displayed nicely and all that. That is all part of that, because the whole context of a page layout wasn't yet clear how the column block or how a cover block with multiple inner blocks would be handling that. So that's certainly a problem to have and to be solved. And I think that's what I learned from Matthias's post is it's very, very high on the priority there. And it also comes in with the black pattern directory now that it's available now. It needs to have a better integration with the inserter, and also get some multi-block transformer improvement that you can transform maybe a cover block into a block pattern, or a paragraph block or a quote block into a block pattern. And that flow also is to be integrated into template parts and page layouts to add block patterns into those.
Yeah, I guess the most important part is that some of the block patterns that are in the directory aren't so easy to use because you need to copy them. And so I hope to see some improvements on that side. And I guess that's doable. It's not that far away from that place.
Yeah, and the Meta team and the Gutenberg team kind of worked on that already with the block directory, where you can search for a block in the inserter and then grab it and get it into your content. I think some basic architecture was already done there.
Yeah, but it was only for a subset of blocks that were marked as core specific. So that's a different story to make it work for everything that is sent to the directory.
Well, the directory itself, the pattern directory, right now only allows for patterns that are built with the core blocks. So there is not, so it should be, it's a similar process. There is no danger that the block that's in the pattern wouldn't be on the site. Well, unless it's kind of switched off. Yeah, there's a block manager that it's switched off. Well, and that's definitely some issues that will need to be solved one way or other, or it will bubble up as a bug later on. The third section that the Gutenberg, what will be, it is the navigation menus that will be the main focus for 5.9. It's the new navigation screen, as well as with the navigation blocks. And there are definitely still some experience and display improvements necessary, and reduce complexity was an expression that Matthias uses in his post. And also that it definitely needs to be tested with as many themes as possible. Speaking of which, and you will hear me talk about it today multiple times, is that there is already a testing call. Anne McCarthy already posted the 9th call for testing for the full site editing outreach program, and that is actually covering headers and navigation. So we start with that already. The 5th one, section for Ventura's roadmap, or WordPress roadmap, then, is creating an interface for the theme JSON file. Right now, writing JSON manually in code is tedious, and the next step is to actually finalize the UI, and the whole system is, we talked about it before, we covered it under global styles, where the user gets the chance to set the theme settings and configuration with the interface in a sidebar in the site editor. That is also coming to 5.9. And the team has been working on that for quite a bit. So The fifth one is headed design tools, colors, typography, spacing, and layout. And one of the main goals, it would be a consistent access to the similar tools across blocks, and including third-party ones, and that the parameters and the settings are kind of normalized between block JSON files and theme JSON file when there's block supports or theme support, that they use the same taxonomy there.
Yeah, we had a lot of experimental features enabled in 5.8, so I hope that all of that is going to be stabilized, and we will have a consistent API. We are on a good path towards this goal, so I'm positive about this one.
Yeah, and there's a lot of testing also done. Actually, Anne McCarthy also published a survey. We will highlight in the show notes the results of it, where they connected with some theme developers on how they're using the theme JSON and what they like and what they don't like. So that is also great input for that phase of preparing for 5.9. And the sixth section in Ventura's roadmap 5.9 post was to formalize the editing flows for block themes and having a clearer information architecture for all the features like editing templates, styling pages, creating whole template parts and all that. There were some great input from the full site editing outreach program, and so that will be iterated a lot. And also finalize the theme level blocks that have been experimental or have not been published they're in the plugin, Gutenberg plugin, but they're not in WordPress core yet. So that concludes the preliminary, that's a very big word here there, roadmap for WordPress 5.9. The schedule is not out yet.
Yeah, I guess the original plan was to have the release in December this year, but I don't know, there isn't a very detailed plan about that, so still probably in works, and we will learn about that soon.
Yeah, I'm thinking the core meeting later today would bring some another preliminary schedule there. Yeah, so if it stays with the schedule for December, then there will be a feature freeze in October, like 8 weeks before the release. And that's only 2 months away. So that's a big roadmap for that. And I'm sure there will be a cutoff date where we say, okay, this comes in or it doesn't come in, or it's ready or it's not ready. Like we had it for 5.8. We have a few community contributions today we want to talk about. First, there is a new podcast. It's called Tell Me About Blocks. And it's an interview podcast about building extensions for Gutenberg, the WordPress block editor. And you can learn from guest experiences, creating block plugins, themes, and block patterns. Michael Schneider is hosting that, and it's a monthly podcast. So July was the first episode and was with Keenan Koppenhaver. He's a WordPress contributor and agency owner and plugin developer. And he talks about his experience to do the Blockosaurus plugin, which he just played around with the block editor to make it a little bit more fun. He's also the maintainer of the Kanban for WordPress plugin that's in the plugin repository. In the second episode, Michael Schneider interviews Rich Tabor and talks with him about the making of the latest plugins, Markdown Comments and the to-do list plugin for the block editor, which are more collaborative plugins for the admin section of the editor rather than for front end. And yeah, I haven't listened to the second one yet. So have you heard about it, Jagos?
I only learned about this podcast yesterday. I subscribe, so I'm planning to listen to both episodes because this is the area I'm the most interested about in the development of the block editor and WordPress in general. So I'm looking forward to it. And we talked about the contributions from Rich, and in particular about the Markdown comments blog and the path, the journey that he had to send all his work to the blog directory. So I'm just keen to learn more about the process and like the experience in the form of the podcast that we all love, right?
Yeah. And so we wish good luck to our fellow podcaster, Michael Schneider, in Tell Me About Blogs. And you can read up about it. Tell me about blogs.com. It's all one word, no dashes, no underscores, anything. It's tell me about blogs.com. So you can subscribe to yourself because you are listening to our podcast, so you are interested in podcasts. So we can There's a second announcement in the community contribution, which is from a team of the WordPress team, from the learn.wordpress.org team. And Hugh Lashbroke and Courtney Robertson have a proposal for brand guidelines for the Learn WordPress content when they ask plugin and theme creators if they want to contribute the course to the site, and the proposal handles the brand guidelines. So if there is how they will handle shout outs to other products that are beyond outside of WordPress.org, but in the space. And I think that should have your attention, and read through it and see what you think about it, because definitely the training team could use some help from more practitioners, and it should be worthwhile for the brands as well. Yeah,
And we need more tutorials how to build for the block editor, how to use the block editor. It's all there, but it's rapidly changing, so we need to record new content. So
right.
it's all in your hands, and we are waiting for that.
Yeah, and it's you make some great impact if you contribute that way to the WordPress project, and it's what you already know, so you don't have to learn a whole new thing, but you can influence millions of WordPress developers who wait for your wisdom. So that brings us to Gutenberg 11.3 release. Yes,
It's
and
still not out at the time
it
of the recording, but we hope that it happens in any hour today. And anyway, we can cover what's already in the release. And so this time there isn't anything in the changelog that would be marked as a new feature, although some of the enhancement listed are, in the in the space of something that could be considered as a new feature. Like there is now a new color picker, an experimental component. So we talked before about this project that this has this code name G2, like next generation of components. And the work is towards building a better UI for all those controls that you use with blocks and with global styles and such. And it's still experimental, but the plan is to have a different color picker, so you can check out this work to see the difference that is there, and if you like it or not, give some feedback. So there's it's still in works, in development, so you have impact on that and can drive the future work on that one.
the G2 just for the G2 initiatives is to make components much more accessible out of the box, so to speak, that a developer who uses those components, not only the Gutenberg developers, but also plugin developers and external developers can use those components and have an accessible experience, a more accessible experience out of the box. At least that was the initial focus from Q and Sarah.
Yeah, and in general, there's more to it, like this
Yeah,
concept of intrinsic web design. This is all about making this new set of components that they, follow those principles and they adjust according to the context. And the other part is the team that is behind that. They are trying to unify the public API. So at the moment, we must admit that some of the components were created a long time ago, and they were more like a realization of the current needs than the vision for the future. But this project helps us to bridge that gap and make it much easier to use for all developers.
Well, thanks you for the little excursus there. So one of the enhancements is also the post-featured image block received basic dimension controls for the image, which was something that was requested quite a bit. And that is when you use the query loop block or the post template, where you have displayed a series of blocks in the featured image with it. You can also use it in the single post template if you have a block-based theme.
And so just to remove some confusion that we discussed before the recording, is that this feature doesn't quite work with classic themes, so it doesn't have any impact on post-featured images unless you start using block-based themes and all those designs.
Cool. Yeah. I think we need to, some of the enhancement that we said, we need to point out that this is not for classic themes.
Yeah, and there's also a small change, a visual change. There are new icons for usable blocks and template part blocks, and those are special. This is a special type of blocks that store the content in the database. And they, in the past, we had this logo looking like a Lego block, and now it looks like a stacked diamonds. And the difference is only that the one of them has the filled in background color, or however something like this. So a subtle difference. It shows that those two blocks are similar, but a bit different for the usage is different.
Yeah,
it's template more parts.
Yeah,
it's more for design, and usable block is more for sharing the same content.
Yeah, and the stacked diamonds kind of represent that it's more a block collection than just one block. And it also, so the reusable block are the ones with just the outline of the stacked diamonds, and the template parts display is the filled in stacked diamonds. And you see them, you can distinguish them in the list view of the site editor or your post editor to identify them better.
Yeah, I think that was the main motivation, because the list view is now persistent. When you have it open, then those visual cues are really important.
The next item is for the block editor. Now, for the internal links, there's also the rich previews enabled. So when you link to a post that's on your own site, once you did the linking and you come back to that post and hover over it, it gives you a nice little window with the title, the featured image, and an excerpt. And it also gives you a little link where you can unlink that post again. So this is similar to a Google Doc linking mechanism, and it really speeds up the quality control of your content when you go back and double check on some of the links. Is it really the right post and all that? And it takes care of, it uses the meta description and the Open Graph meta tags for that rich preview. So if your site doesn't use those, you won't get the rich previews, but and it wouldn't show. But most WordPress sites use them out of the box anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a game changer for content creators. I use this command plus trackpad click feature to just show, to check if the link that I used is correct one. So you no longer have to do it. You just hover over the link and you have the hint for visible at your, The other thing is that the button block, it has now padding block support, and this one is quite different in how it has changed, because it's not only a new feature that was added to the sidebar, but I think this is also the one that introduces a bit different UI experience. Is it this one, or did I miss that?
No, it's the next one, but this one is the padding now. Padding has been around for quite a bit, padding and margin for cover block, and now it also comes to the button block. So it's the sub block of the buttons block. where you can set the padding for all buttons or for the whole dimensions of the button, like the padding 20, and it adds them to the top, to the right, and to the left, and to the bottom. Or you can unlink those sections and then individually change the top, left, right, and bottom padding, as well as the padding for the button. You were talking about the next piece that was the dimensions panel. Yeah. For the
it's
global
interrelated.
Yeah.
Because the new dimensions panel, it's using two features, like it's controlling two features, which one of them is the padding and the other one is margin. And the idea is that with so many new controls showing up, it's for some blogs it's too much to process when you look at the sidebar. So there is this exploration that is already in the Gutenberg plugin that allows you to use the drop down menu to pick what's displayed inside the panel. So you can decide whether you want to display both the paddings and the margin or only one of them. And there is also this reset all feature that just goes to the default state. So according to the discussions that is in this PR, you can find out that this type of interaction is considered for all other panels like typography and color. So I'm looking forward how it changes, because it's something that is site owners requested for so long, to have better control over those features. Once we have that applied to all features, it will be much easier to give also some coding APIs that will allow to control that from the code, so you could easily turn off all the features you don't want to have on the site.
Yeah, and it's also part of the what Matthias mentioned before in his roadmap post, that the consistency of having the controls all look alike. So once a user learns them, he can apply his knowledge to all kind of different places where that control can be used, and also how to handle margin, that it's not different from a content, from a cover block to the theme parts sidebar. So that's part of the normalizing and being more consistent in all the tools. So those are the enhancements. Then we have a few bug fixes. There are quite a few bug fixes in this release. I just wanted to highlight one of them, that is that the custom gradient picker for left to right languages is now fixed. So now gradients work better again for left to right languages. Yeah. I'm a fan of gradients, and everybody should have access to it.
Yeah, it's definitely a very nice feature. And there's other bug fixes I want to mention, that in the template editor, and now we show only post template actions for user with correct capabilities. So sometimes those features are very powerful, so you want to have better control who can access them. And it's something that is constantly looked at and improved.
Yeah, that's
so many new features added. It's very easy to miss that part, that there should be permissions.
Yeah, this alleviates some of the anxiousness that theme developers have, that any user can mess up the beautiful theme with changing some of the templates. But now it's only restricted to the admin. So that angst can be alleviated. There were also quite a few performance improvements that come with this Gutenberg release 11.3. And one of them is the lazy render block types in the inserter. So it only shows block types on that are necessary now. We talked about it before, I think, and that is an additional
It might be something different. Yeah. As far as I remember, this one is the same solution that was used for block patterns. So block patterns, does the previews and so on. It's a lot of data to process. So there is a special handler that just splits all the list of all block patterns into chunks, and this solution was like implemented also from to the block inserted, and improved the performance, like perceived performance of the inserted immensely. So the difference you can see is that you will see small parts of the block types in the inserted at first, and the rest will just be iteratively added as the browser has free cycles to process that. So that makes the experience smooth, because you can already start processing the block items in the inserter as they are rendered. In the past, you would have to wait until everything is ready, so that's a big improvement.
Yeah.
And
So what I see in that PR is that Riyadh created a little page or website that measures the block editor performance, and it's titled, "Is Gutenberg fast yet?" I think we talked about it before, yeah, where he has the
yes.
and he sees the different items, if they how much time they use, and so he can do he does some incremental improvements there, and highlights all the different things that are keeping Gutenberg from being fast. So it's quite an interesting, for those who are interested in that kind of analysis. Yeah, look at the PR and the site, and maybe you can help and figure out some of the performance hogs to make it even faster.
Yeah, also speaking of Riyadh and all his efforts to improve the performance of the editor, he also posted on his blog about the cost of WordPress plugins on the performance of the editor. So it's a really good read, especially if you're one of the authors of blogs. And he just shows the results of measuring the impact of the most popular plugins, and there's also he covers the plugins that add the functionality to the blocks, like additional features, and how it impacts the performance. And he covers also some recipes, how you can measure it on your own when you are developing. And like the state of major plugins is really good. It has improved. As he was preparing this post, he reached out to some of those plugins, and they improved the performance based on his findings. So that's how it shows how the community is really into this performance improvements, and that's really great to see how it evolves. And it's like, I recommend checking out this post. He shares his like approach how to process all that. And there's also it's a follow-up post, because in the past he had another post when he explained all the impacts of different approaches that you take when building blocks, using data stores, using like rendering, and it's very complex. So if you are really into blog development, those two posts is definitely must have if you want to provide the great experience for users, because performance is one of the most important aspects of that.
Yeah, and I'm just scrolling through the. Thank you very much for pointing out this post. I haven't seen it yet, so it's definitely, we will share the link in the show notes, and it's definitely an eye opener in how plugins change performance. And he has some nice spreadsheets there where you can look things up, and also how you can, as you said, how you can measure your own as well if you develop a plugin for that. Yeah, thank you. It's also improved performance through the parser of removing the automatic custom class names handling. What does that mean? I'm not so quite sure. I understand it.
It's quite complex, but the difference here is that this was the responsibility of the block editor before, and Riyadh move this logic to the block parser. So it's happening earlier in the process. And because of that, it allows to skip some of the, in some cases, like when you have the classic block or you have the HTML, I don't remember other blocks, like that for some blocks you don't have to do this processing because they are not using this automatic class name handling, so you can skip that. That's one improvement from start, but also this ensures that the logic is executed only when really necessary. So when the block is valid, you don't have to do run that at all. But with the previous solution, it was always applied, so that it had a really big impact when the post was really big. So it's very technical, and it's something that a small group of people can really help with. But Riyad he's just a king of performance, so he
Yeah,
knows
he
how to do
probably
it.
loves to hear that. The king of performance. Yeah. No, but it also shows that it only can be an iterative part, yeah, that you can get it perfect and you can get it to be more performant after the fact. Yeah. Yeah, and that brings us to the experiment section of this release notes. We highlight the template part placeholder now when you create a new template part with the site editor. So experiments, there's a full site editing in there, and the navigation screen are the only experiments right now in the Gutenberg plugin that you have to switch on. The site editor itself is actually already switched on. I don't know why it's still in the experiments there, but when you create a new template part, say a header or maybe a sidebar item, it now asks you for a title as well in the create flow, so you don't get as many untitled template parts as you got before. Yeah, you can think about the title right when you create it. That's definitely a improvement of the flow.
Yeah, also here that the template part is going to be promoted to the stable feature. So it means that will be included in WordPress 5.9 for sure. And maybe that even will happen in the next plugin release, so 11.4. And that's great because this is a very exciting feature and it will open a lot of possibilities.
Yeah,
Even for classic themes.
Yeah, yeah. And now that it's coming out of experimental, means there are more eyeballs on it to test it and to figure out what needs to be changed or if it needs to be changed and what bug fixes are there. Yeah. So the navigation link block that's a child block of the navigation block now actually also has the ability to remove a link, which is certainly in the process of creating a navigation a useful tool. Now it's there.
And I think that brings us to the documentation section. And there is one item I wanted to highlight because we have those blog patterns that you can search from the blog patterns directory. And of course, some sites owners don't want to have them. So now there is a document explaining how you can disable that. That part was missing, but it was possible from the release WordPress 5.8. So it's now covered. If you don't like that, you can check out how to disable that.
Yay. Yeah, as any WordPress feature that is new, not only needs a way to enable it, it also needs a way to disable it to make it as flexible as possible for all the WordPress instances that are out there. Which brings us, so there are quite a few other smaller changes to the documentation that you can check out for yourself because they're just existing changes to existing documentation pages. Code quality, there's one highlighted that is the remove of the experimental prefix and rename the theme JSON files. So if you're theme developers, you now can remove the __ experimental prefix on your theme JSON files as well, calls. And so it will not read anymore from the experimental -theme JSON file either.
Yes. And there is a small change in the API. So in the core data, there was a method to get authors,
Authors, yeah.
and it wasn't very flexible, but it's now like deprecated in favor of get users that allows you to pass a flag to return only authors, but also it has a lot of other features that makes it better use. So it's only change to consolidate the API and make it easier to discover.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to go through the tools section? Because I'm
So
a little
one
bit.
there is one big change in that regard. So there's a lot of complaints about build tooling, and I relate to that because I was the one of a few folks that were involved in updating Webpack to version 5, and it was a pain. And it was we started the first try in January, I guess, but it failed because of several issues, and now we finally made it, and it's going to be so like the changes in the Gutenberg plugin already, and it has a good impact on the bundle size, so it has decreased. Like it was 30 kilobytes less that's going to be sent to user, which is a big win. So like yay for Webpack 5. But
Yay.
there's more to it. So this change will also be applied in the WordPress scripts, and we should expect npm publishing for this package later this week. And so basically, if you are using default config files, everything should be good. If you are using your own custom config, then if you want to upgrade to the latest version, be prepared for some troubles because it isn't easy. And Webpack isn't backward compatible to the degree that the WordPress is. So it's just what it is.
Yeah. As we say, there will be
Uh,
dragons.
For sure, if you have a custom config, it's not easy. Believe
Yeah.
me, I've been there already. And like the next step, of course, will be to do the same update in WordPress core. So there's 3 places to update. So I understand the frustration from people who try to use those tools by themselves. So you
Yeah.
have a lot of courage.
So, and then there's one other features that we highlight from the testing section, and that is that the mobile team added a guide for integration testing, if I say this right. And it turns out to be quite complex.
Yeah, I mean, in general, we talked a lot last time about the barrier of entry for developing for WordPress. So the way to start even writing tests for the mobile apps is just, on completely different level. It's just, it's like a sky wrapper or something like that. So it's just so complex. And yeah, I guess this shows how the not only web but how the world evolved. You no longer only care about the browser, but there is also the phone, the tablet, and building apps for that. So if you are curious to learn how you could contribute to the native apps, if you are interested in this type of development, that's definitely a good way to check and play with that, all those tools, and see how complex the setup can be if you are going outside of the web bubble.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never really ventured into the native apps development, but I had hoped that React Native would be a path to go. And then I read, oh, by the way, this brings us to the end of the changelog, and we are now more in the section of active development or what's discussed. And we will share a post to Meg Chowning that he wrote about building an editor by sharing code between Android, iOS, and web with React Native. And it only brings you so far to reuse code base. And it seems that the mobile team recreated some of the Gutenberg experience, recreated them from scratch, reusing components, but not reusing some of the code base. And it's quite an interesting read in terms of finding out how complex that whole thing is when you go to a phone screen and operating system.
Yeah, but the good point that the team and the mobile WordPress mobile team is very happy about choosing React Native,
Yeah.
and they emphasize that the speed of the development is really good because they can share the logic part of the editor that is developed for the web version. So all the JavaScript code is they can reuse, and they don't have to write it from scratch. And what's even more important, whenever there's a performance improvement, they get the same improvement on their side. And also, like from my perspective, whenever they find something that is not working properly, they contribute back, so all parties win here. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the beauty of that setup.
Yeah, and everybody benefits from that. The mobile version is also part of the overall Gutenberg GitHub repository. So there is some synergy there as well. All right. So there was 2 weeks ago, there was this big discussion about barriers to entry. And in our weekend edition 180 and 181 on the Gutenberg Times, I share quite a few blog posts and discussions on podcasts about that topic. So if you want to dive into it some more, but Justin Tadlock from the WordPress Tavern interviewed Matthias Ventura, the project Gutenberg project lead, on that. And it's an interesting read in that regard, that it really depends on the knowledge of who is developing for the web. Yeah, and it's a different perspective from someone like me who started with HTML, where only HTML was around, and it took about a couple of years before CSS came in, and then it took up another couple of years before I needed to write some early JavaScript, and I only had to add one little thing to my whole tool set, but it was also the speed of things. But latest in 2004, 5, or 7, yeah, I kind of was left behind on all the cool development, and now caught up with it through WordPress, because that's how when we started, yeah, in 2010 we started with WordPress, and it took me about 5 years before I even had to touch code on a WordPress install to make a feature work. So it really depends on where you come from. And I jumped from a Cold Fusion development base to a very rudimentary PHP to good JavaScript knowledge. And the barrier is different for me from like someone to build a plugin from someone who has 10 years of PHP experience and knows all the intricacies of WordPress, because for 10 years she has been developing in that space. So that's one thing. And Matthias also points out that the theme creation and the new on-ramps for theme developers is so much lower than it was the last 10 years for theme development in WordPress, because now you can start with the block-based templates, you can do block patterns, you have the theme JSON to control some of the features, and you could basically write a new theme without touching code, because the site editor gives you all the tools with it, or at least that's the vision. In 5.8 comes very close to the 5.9 will come close to it. And then with patterns, you can enhance any theme in any case very easily with just assembling a few blocks. He also
Yeah, I think
mentions,
it's very
yeah,
interesting. I
go
think
ahead.
it's very interesting to hear the vision from Matthias, because he also shared this preliminary scope for WordPress 5.9. So he knows what's the end goal, and that's much easier to see the landscape, how it will look in a few months, when you will be able to fully benefit from all the latest development in the space of block teams. And that's one way of looking at that. Also, I think that in general, if you look at the development for the web 10, 15 years ago, you didn't compete with mobile apps. They didn't exist at all. So everyone was using Nokia or other phone that only allowed you to play Snake or something similar. That was it. And so, the mobile apps, tablets, they change the perception of what you can do, how you interact with those devices, and all the gestures and stuff like this, and animations, and the performance that was so much better because it uses some native technologies. So if you combine all those aspects together, it's really hard to tell that the development should be still simple and the barrier of entry should be simple. It cannot be, because we have so much bigger expectation as users these days. So there are some libraries that help with that, but exploring the libraries, finding the right one and integrating that, it's another level of complexity here. So
I also think there's a kind of a level of decision paralysis, because if you have too many choices on the libraries, the chance that you pick the wrong one is really high, and that for some people that is an existential decision, and if your business depends on it, it makes it an existential decision that a lot of other people kind of depend on that. So I can see that, but it's not only WordPress. It's just all we know is WordPress, but it's in all the areas that are out there that develop for the web.
I have go on.
Well, all I wanted to say was, when I look at what all needs to happen at the same time and play together, all the little pieces, it's actually a miracle it works at all. Because so many things could work. So we should all be blessed that we actually can get something together that works for millions of people.
Yeah, I think we all were happy about the limitation of the web like 15 years ago. So you had the basic HTML, CSS was very basic. Now there is CSS like 4. So the number of features that was added in the meantime is so like in scope is so gigantic, and you have to learn fifth method of positioning elements on the page. And also you have JavaScript that has evolved. There are new features in the language. Even PHP, if you look back, like PHP 4 or 5, it's a completely different language than PHP 8 that you have now with types and some strict checks and so on. And the tools that are around that, we didn't have linters back in the day. Now it's widely popular. And end-to-end testing was very hard in the past. Now you have so many tools to pick from. So, it's up to you what you pick, because you could still use only PHP, HTML, and CSS and some basic JavaScript, and that should be fine. But the question is if users will like it, or in terms of the front end experience, but also if the customers for all the businesses that WordPress supports will be still happy to continue using very simplified interface that is very technical.
I think there's so many things for many people. I think we will have a link to the WordPress Tavern article with the interview with Matthias in our show notes. It's definitely worth a read. And that brings us, I think, to the end of the show.
Yeah, and one more thing, definitely look out for the Gutenberg Times newsletter, because it has a lot of links to those discussions, and this week you should expect more, because those discussions still happen on the web, on Twitter. So be aware and look forward to it.
Yeah, I'll have those in the show note as well. This week's weekend edition is not going to happen until next week. because I'm
A
still
suspense, nice.
Yeah, suspense on that, because I'm still on vacation and I'm visiting family in Europe. So, but before we end, again, please heed the call. If you have some time, heed the call to the testing, FSE testing call for number 9, with working with the headers and navigation, coming to the site editor to Gutenberg. We will need your input. We need to learn from your experiences and also from your expectations. What you tried to do, what you were able to do, and what didn't work, and what you expected how it would work. I think that would be really, really helpful for the team to come out of experimental stage and get into the main plugin with the navigation screen and block. As always, the show notes will be published on the Gutenberg Times podcast at gutenbergtimes.com/podcast. This is number 50. We're halfway to number 100, right? And if you have any questions and suggestions or news you want to include, send them to changelog@gutenbergtimes.com. That's changelog@gutenbergtimes.com. Thank you so much, Craig, for spending this morning with me. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And thank you all for listening. And I say goodbye.
Thank you, Birgit, and thank you all our listeners, and see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.